is up? What is up? Got back from Michigan today, the Arctic tundra that is the Midwest. So let's talk about what we saw at the Breslin. Here we go. It is the 200 level. Mike Carpenter in the basement studio on a frigid Monday afternoon. Martin Luther King Day, Inauguration Day, the Bears landing Ben Johnson Day. So somewhere down that list of newsworthy items is Illinois losing at Michigan State, which a day later, while it still is frustrating in certain ways, is not in and of itself a bad loss to lose by 2 on the road to Michigan State, even if KJ would have played more than 8 freaking minutes, which we will get to that, is nothing to hang your head about. I think what it does from a narrative standpoint is probably eliminates the Big Ten title talk. I might have mentioned this either during the Indiana podcast or certainly during the USC one before that. I wasn't going to broach Big Ten title conversations unless they got to win at Michigan State, in which case they would vault themselves back into that conversation, not just on this podcast, but really among anyone following Big Ten basketball. You didn't do that. Michigan State remains undefeated in the conference, 16-2 overall. It was an impressive win for them. Walking out of Breslin Center and hearing this group of Michigan State kids behind me and Kara, and listen, they're college kids. They said something along the lines of, "What the hell's an Illini anyway?" And it wasn't in regards to me because my orange was not visible under my gigantic North Face coat, but they were talking like an excited group of fans would after a big win. If this heartens you at all, I only bring that up because, yes, Illinois was a major opportunity for Michigan State. It was a show-me kind of game for a team that had really beat up on the lower half of the Big Ten, and Michigan State played a good game. If you want to call it great, I don't know if I go so far as to say that, but they really did what this Michigan State team has done very well this year. And credit to them, KJ playing or not, they still got 80 points on Illinois. They really got to the basket when they wanted to. They drew plenty of fouls, got, I think, 21 free throws, and they made more of them than we did. And I will say, other than the KJ fouls, there weren't that many egregious foul calls that I thought were overall called against Illinois yesterday. I thought it was just Michigan State being aggressive, as they usually are, and their defense was just enough to kind of make you a little bit uncomfortable and keep a lot of guys out of sorts, quite honestly, for Illinois. So, yeah, it's credit to them. It's credit to Tom Izzo for really getting the Izzo groove back in order after a weird few years where, other than Tyson Walker and A.J. Hoggard, who might have been part of the problem, according to anyone that really followed that team, they seem to really be embodying everything that Tom Izzo's Spartan teams often are about. But for every winner, there is a loser. And on that side of the coin, where we are at the moment, there's a lot of frustration, and we can direct it a few different ways. And one of those, and the first thing I thought of walking out of that stadium yesterday, 2 years in a row, I've seen disappointing losses against Michigan State up there, and I do think we'll get them back here, but it probably will be too late to consider a Big Ten title. And I understand the inclination for Illinois fans to say, well, it's not about that. It's about March. And having grown up with all the tales of the 89 Flying Illini team, there's some truth to that. The 89 team was more well-regarded than the 83-84 team. Difference is, even though 83-84 got the Big Ten banner, they didn't make it to the Final Four, and the 89 team did. So if you were to tell me right now we're sacrificing a Big Ten title for a Final Four appearance, I will happily accept that trade. Problem is, there's never a guarantee of March success. And while there isn't necessarily a guarantee of regular season success, over the course of 20 games, you get to prove your mettle against your opponents. In March, it is a one and done. You have one bad afternoon and it's over. And that's it. Or you have one bad matchup and it's done. So call it something as simple as, a banner to fall back on in case things don't go well in March. Because as much as I like this team's ceiling, and as much as I think that Kasparas could lead them to a crazy March run because he's that freaking good, and the supporting cast, when Kasparas is out there especially, can be very good themselves, I can't bank on that. there's still some inconsistency there where, as always, it will be matchup based, and it will also be what kind of performances are you getting from the other guys. And sadly, now there's that little thing in the back of our heads of, well, will Kasparas stay out of foul trouble? And yeah, the Big Ten title, I don't want to just dismiss that and say, well, yeah, ho-hum. When you have opportunities to win banners, take advantage of them. And Brad Underwood has 3 of them, 2 Big Ten tournament, 1 regular season. That's really good when you consider that we're in year 8 and the first 2 were rebuilding years. So that's 3 banners in 5 seasons. This is the 6th, let's say, relevant year in a row for Brad Underwood of his 8. And I mean, if he would have won another banner somehow, some way this year, an impressive tally. I would never expect him and this program to win one year in, year out. But what it really did yesterday was kind of reframe just how frustrating the USC Northwestern losses were. Things happen. I get it. You are not going to bat 1,000. However, those were 2 teams that this Illinois team, with the talent they have, had no business losing to. Losing by 2 on the road to Michigan State with your best player playing 8 minutes, there's no shame in that. I'm not angry about really any way that Illinois played yesterday. Yeah, I'd like them to make their layups a little bit better. I'd like them to shoot threes a little better. And yet, they still got 78 points and were right there at the end of it. Down 7 with, 3 minutes to go. I'm just dead silent, and places going nuts after the Cohen Carr dunk. Might have been a little bit before that, but Michigan State was up 7 a couple times there in the waning moments, and then you still fought your way back into something with, I thought, some really good plays from Juarez, who had a good game overall. Tomislav, I think bounced back late and had some good moments for you. DGL continues to be kind of my guy. Kylan, I know, was not the most efficient. And there were some questions about how effective he was yesterday. And Trey White, a no-show, really. Hamrikaus, nothing in the second half. And yet, you were right there. And the game ended. And mind you, that most people that are the punditry of college basketball are talking about how, yeah, that's a big one for Michigan State, but Illinois is probably the better team. And I would agree with that. Despite the records, I would say that Illinois on a good day is better than Michigan State on a good day. I think that Illinois will get Michigan State back on February 15th. I have very little doubt about that, in fact. But the point remains, you are 5-3 in conference, and they're 7-0 or 8-0 or whatever it may be. And a banner that this team, talent-wise, should have had every opportunity to go and get is now kind of a pipe dream. Now, Illinois could rattle off a bunch of wins in a row. I actually look at the schedule and think it's about time to do just that, because we've had a few too many, again, for this team's talent, it's felt like a few too many recalibration games. Oh, we lost that. Now let's get things right again. And now it's time to go on a significant run. They had 5 wins in a row. That is not anything to sneeze at, but there's 5 wins before the USC game. Nothing to sneeze at, but would you agree, and this is probably to do with all the new faces and pieces on this team, that this season has had a little bit of start and stop. And when it's going, it feels really good. But there have been these intermittent periods, a game or 2 within a 2-3 week span where you say, what? What's that all about? And now that you've taken some lumps and that you face some adversity, do you respond to that with a long stretch, which Brad Underwood's teams, other than 22-23, tend to do? I actually think it could start Thursday against that dreaded team. You know who they are, Maryland. But I tell you what, this is the thing. If we would have beaten Michigan State, I almost would have guaranteed we lost to Maryland. And if we lost to Michigan State, I would almost guarantee that we beat Maryland. Recalibration, right? This team has done a very good job of bouncing back after losses, and I would expect that to continue on Thursday. And we'll be here for that, a second half podcast. But all that said, unless I have an opportunity to go to the game, in which case I'll keep you guys all posted on that. But lots to talk about today. And yes, we will talk about officiating after I get the sponsors real quick. Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits for my money, the best restaurant in Champaign, and I'm very lucky that they would put their name on a podcast like this because they are top notch. I would like to think that our quality is even half of what they are for the restaurant business for Illini sports podcasting, but I can't say that for sure because I do know this for a fact. Hamilton Walker's, their scratch kitchen, everything made from scratch, makes the best food in this area. And on top of that, awesome bartenders that make, for my money, the best old-fashioned in town, but that's just one of the many options that you can get. You can either go there for some appetizers and a couple drinks in the front room bar area, or you can go there for a full dinner, whether it be a pregame, for example, Thursday night before the Illinois-Maryland game. No better spot in Champaign-Urbana than Hamilton Walker's, downtown Champaign. Also got to thank Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Very timely as we sit here about to be in an Arctic freeze. No school tomorrow for Champaign-Urbana, and I think most schools in the area because it's just too damn cold. But fortunately, our house is nice and toasty thanks to the experts, excuse me, at Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. And we have a service plan. So they come out, they check our AC, and they check our furnace and take care of all of those and have them operating as well as they could. And our system's not brand new by any stretch, and yet it is energy efficient and working as well as it has since we moved in here. So we got to thank Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend, at 217-841-4728. Also, need to thank State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he could be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. And finally, Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com. Luke and his staff are really good at what they do for a lot of home improvement projects and home additions, things like that. Check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote while you're there at owenbuildersllc.com. Got to thank Champagne Showers Podcast Network and, of course, you, the viewer. You got a few people in there. Hello, YouTube, on this Monday. And head to the chat window with any of your thoughts about the Michigan State game, if you would like. And then also, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, yeah, 200-level book. I haven't really pushed that since Christmas. We had a really good December, a lot of stocking stuffers, I would imagine. But that is, of course, available locally at Game Day Spirit, Jane Addams Bookstore in Champaign, and also everywhere on Amazon. Let's talk about officiating. It's not just me. I noticed yesterday as I was kind of looking at Twitter intermittently, and then really last night, because I will say this for East Lansing, it's a really cool college town. So we go to the game, afterwards hit up this place called Harper's, which is a really cool bar on the north side of campus off of Grand River Road, which is their main drag. I don't know if I'd call it like Green Street, but I guess sort of the same thing, where bars, restaurants, a couple hotels that you can stay at right in the heart of campus. So we go to Harper's afterwards, and, you know, while there was frustration right when the game ended, I have gotten a little bit better, unless it's a really crippling loss like Loyola a few years ago, a little bit better at just, okay, we move on. The day continues. And that's what we did. Had a great time in East Lansing, and just some imbibing during the day on what was a freezing day up there. At least not bad early, but then got pretty bad late. Into the night watching some football. And that was when I'm going through Twitter and just really kind of then understanding the extent to which not just Illini fans, who they would be the first ones to be kind of peeved about officiating, but how it was kind of a national thing for college basketball pundits and writers, and even to the degree where Field of 68 held, like a 15, 20-minute segment specifically on officiating in college basketball. Now, if you were to say, did officiating cost Illinois that game? I am always reluctant to do that because it is an external factor, but a factor nonetheless. I try to direct my ire, if you will, towards things that Illinois could have done better. Like making layups. I don't understand why this team is allergic to making layups at a higher percentage. They're getting the looks. They just aren't finishing them. I could also say that there were times offensively where a whole lot of dribbling and not a lot else, and then kind of forcing yourself into not great shots. This is for a team that scored 78 with Kasparas on the bench. I think it shows you that there's still quite a bit of offensive talent there. I could point at individuals that had off games. I mean, Benham Rickhouse had a 3 early, and he had a nice take, but you got to have more. I do like he's more active. I don't feel like he's a sieve defensively quite like he used to be. He looks more comfortable out there, but you got to have more production. And Trey White is nowhere to be found. Maybe defensively he's doing fine. I mean, I didn't notice him on that side of the ball, so that must mean that he is, in fact, doing okay. But there's just nothing going offensively for him, and that's a bummer because that's 2 games in a row where he's been a non-factor. So there's plenty of things that Illinois can point at themselves and say, well, he could have done this, he could have done that. There was the technical late, which I thought from way up in our seats was on Brad Underwood, and this was after Michigan State got a timeout on a loose ball from their bench, which apparently the rule states that it's got to be under 2 minutes for that to be a possibility. Okay. I was frustrated with that too, and then thought that Brad Underwood decided that was the time to get the technical when you then afforded Michigan State 2 more free throws. Well, what do you lose by? 2 points. And turns out it was not Underwood specifically. It was a bench technical, and it sounds like Orlando Antigua was particularly heated. Now, I understand getting heated, but in the waning moments of the game, wait until it's truly out of reach before you grant the other team 2 points and lose by, oh, wait, let me check the scoreboard. 2 points. There is plenty of blame to go around for Illinois. There are plenty of things that they could have done better, but they didn't. And from my vantage point, we are still probably a better team than Michigan State. But the problem is our ceiling of top 10 quality play can sometimes be hampered by things that simply should not be happening now as we are in mid-January. New team or not, they have 18 games under their belt. And for the most part, you like what you see, and you feel like they are building towards something that is very dangerous come March. I still feel that way. I think we all understood there'd be lumps that they would take along the way. But nonetheless, can't we learn some of these lessons after a win? Think about it. Washington was a close win, only by the skin of your teeth after you allowed them to come all the way back. For the most part, this is a feast or famine thing. I guess Missouri was another close win. But we're either completely clocking teams or it's getting down close, and then those are really 50-50 propositions. I would venture to say that this roster should not be a 50-50 proposition in late-game situations, given the guys that they have versus their opponents. And I hope as time goes on in this stretch run that it is not 50-50. So I wanted to do that and hit up the internal factors, the things that Illinois could have done better themselves. But I would be remiss if I did not say officiating had an impact. Duh, Captain Obvious. There is a problem with officiating in college basketball. I've seen it at a few games on just Illinois' docket this year. The Tennessee game was an absolute drag. The enjoyment of that game was hampered by terrible officiating. And that was maybe not so one-sided, but it was called, the whistle was blown, I should say, so many times that it prevented any flow in that game, which was a high-level game otherwise. The Missouri game had some absolutely egregious no calls. Absolutely egregious. And then yesterday, Kasparas probably had 2 fouls that were legit, and 3 if you were to be generous. The 4th foul was phantom, going for a loose ball and then stepping on a foot. It's not a foul. It was at that precise moment, even from way up in the seats, that I said, bull blank. I know I've said that on the show before, but it's a family-friendly program. Try to clean it up. So I said, bull blank. And it just came out. It was totally reactionary. It wasn't, these aren't premeditated. When there's a moment of frustration, out it comes. And I'm on the aisle. Kara's next to me, and then there's a Michigan State fan next to her, and he just goes, good call. And I was like, all right, touche. I'm in your place. I respect the fact that you guys are the home team. I just thought it was kind of funny. And I wasn't going to be like, hey, you know what, man? Whether it was a subtle dig or not, the timing after my bull beep was perfect. I got to give him that. But it was bull bleep. And the fifth foul, of course, was the cherry on top of the turd sundae, and that was a smart play by Frankie Fiddler, who, if he were wearing a Wisconsin uniform, would drive me far more nuts than he does at Michigan State. Using space wisely and KJ not being wise himself. But when I tweet out last night, for those watching on TV, or for those with a better vantage point than from where I was at in Section 225, how many legit fouls were there? And I get Jeremy Werner, he of Illini Inquirer, he that from all the years that I've known him and the 10 years I worked with him was Mr. Reasonable. To me, it's like he's a barometer for, okay, am I getting a little bit overboard here? Which, of course I do. I do it quite a bit. I try to be very honest when I do that, whether it's in hindsight or in the moment. I try to never, not accept responsibility for ridiculous takes, of which I've had many. But when I throw that out there, and then Jeremy says only 2 of the 5 were legit. It adds a little salt to the wound when the best player on either team plays a grand total of 8 minutes in a marquee matchup on a Sunday afternoon. Which leads to a bigger question. What are we doing in college basketball? I know that it is a fast game, faster than ever. Whenever you sit close at any of these games, and my parents' seats are great vantage point, and you just see how physical and how fast it moves. But all too often, these games are getting hijacked by bad officiating. It's disrupting the flow. It's taking the best players out of the game. And I would go so far as to say this, and if this is a ludicrous take, so be it. I would completely do away with the idea of someone being disqualified for getting X amount of fouls. Why not make it a sliding scale where if it's your 5th foul or beyond, the opposing team gets 2 shots and the ball, or they get 3 shots. I'm just saying ways to penalize the team without taking the best players out of the game. It is an old, archaic rule, and you look at soccer, for example, you get a yellow card. If you get 2 yellow cards, you get a red card. If it's a really egregious foul, you get a red card. But for simple contact, you are not going to get yellow cards, certainly not red cards. You're not going to get disqualified for contact. Why do we not have the same thing for basketball? And what it's doing is affecting games. And games affect championships, and they affect seedings, and they affect, for selfish reasons, my freaking enjoyment of the game and your enjoyment of the game too. It's getting a bit tiresome. So, in a way, the game yesterday was like a weird fever dream. It was like it almost even didn't happen. We come in the second half. KJ picks up 2 fouls right away. The 4th one was 16:37 to go, something like that. And it's like, do you, as an official, not have the cognitive ability to recognize that, okay, on Michigan State, we got Jeremy Fears Jr., Jaden Akins. They're good players. I think that maybe the Big Ten folks that are tuning in this game, or the national folks, might like to see those guys. On the Illinois side, they got this Kasparas guy, and he's pretty good, and maybe fans might want to watch them play. Now, if that sounds really oversimplistic, and Carp, it's more important than who wants to just watch the game, screw that. It's entertainment. It's entertainment. And there was nothing so egregious that KJ did in any one of those fouls that merited getting disqualified from a game with 8 minutes played. 20% of that game, the best player in the court was out there for 20% of the game. Hey, good thing he's well rested. But to me, just that notion, if I'm a national college basketball fan and I tune into a game and know that there is a top 5 pick that is playing in that game, and I don't even get to see him, I'm turning the freaking channel. So this is something that college basketball has to figure out. And I don't know at what level you do it. At a conference by conference, where each conference is seemingly officiated different than the others. But the fact that you go into each game and then you have to determine in the course of that game, how it's being officiated tells you all you need to know. Of course, there is subjectivity that goes into officiating, that goes into being a referee. And I would never go so far as to say it's easy. But these guys are making it entirely too difficult, and they are completely influencing the way that these games are played. And that's not what it should be. The best officials are the ones that are not recognized, the ones that you don't even notice. I'd rather a game be physical to a fault. I'd rather there be the benefit of the doubt. And in some matchups, that might bite Illinois in the butt. Michigan State's a physical team. That's okay. I don't need any Michigan State guys to foul out. Just let each foul contribute to the bonus or the double bonus, and then we'll shoot free throws, whatever it may be. But just this notion, add a sixth foul, or get rid of the DQ in general, or make it that if you get more than 5 fouls, the penalties or the amount of free throws taken by the other team increase. Whatever it may be, though, it shouldn't be this. It just shouldn't be. And Michigan State fans, understandably, when they saw this yesterday on Twitter, some of them were like, you poor losers. I get that. And there is something icky about complaining about officials. But the problem is, and for those that listen, you know I don't do the officials thing. I don't. If I were to have done this podcast for the last 25 years, the only time that I might have actually really gotten on the officials about anything was the Sean May, James Augustine thing in 2005. That might have been the only time. I mean, I could look at the Purdue-Illinois football game back in 2022 when there was the pass interference against Devin Witherspoon, a play that changed the game. But my focus the very next day in that podcast wasn't that call, was the fact that we never allowed ourselves to recover from it, and that was in the second quarter. So you know, if you've been listening to this or follow me on Twitter, I don't do the low-hanging fruit with officials. I don't. One, it's nothing I can control. And the same would be said for the games themselves. But truly, officiating, you will drive yourself batty if you focus in on it every game. There's going to be crap calls every game. You just hope they kind of balance at the end. That's been my mindset. I don't harp on it, but gosh dang it. That was a frustrating game to watch, knowing that the best player was just sitting. And why? Because a few dopes with whistles decided that he had fouled a few too many times. When the tape goes to show that, okay, if you were to be generous, there's probably 3. The fourth one was absolutely ridiculous. And the fifth, while he could have had more spatial awareness, was not exactly affecting Frankie Fiddler's shot, considering Frankie Fiddler was the one who backed into him. It's not Frankie's fault. It was a good play. It's what you do when you know the guy has 4 fouls. KJ has to be smarter. But nonetheless, can't the officials be a little bit smarter too? So that is the most extended rant I have ever done, and I hope to ever do, about officials on this podcast. I know that Jeremy doesn't like to talk about it either, and they had to yesterday because it was just that blatant. And when you see guys like Rob Douster on Field of 68, the company that Trevor works for and produces a lot of their stuff, he's not someone looking for a narrative about officiating either, from everything I've watched from him. It's not something that fans are looking to be pissed off. Well, let me rephrase. Sure, some fans are looking to be pissed off by officials or, the commentators on the game who they think don't like their team. That is true. But I would say that the majority of fans, whether it's 51% or more than that, tune into the games and they just hope, I hope I don't notice the officials. That they don't go into the game from tip-off saying, I can't wait until the first bad call because I'm just going to spend the rest of this game fuming about that officiating call. So that was a bummer. From Jacob, KJ was +7 in his 8 minutes. Imagine if he plays 20. Well, you win. And Jacob, if he plays 30, you win by a few possessions. You're better than them. You are. And if you're healthy and there's not foul trouble, you're going to beat them on February 15th. I have no doubt about that. Michigan State is a good team. But I thought going in we matched up well. And after that game, I still think we match up well. I think that our guards and the size that our guards have against their guards bodes well. I was most impressed with Kohler from Michigan State, who is just pretty steady front court guy. And yeah, the Cohen card and the Xavier Booker, those are kind of wild cards for them. But I thought it was a good matchup going in. I still think it's a good matchup now. And if you play them at home, you're going to beat them. If you play in the Big Ten tournament, I think you beat them too. I would not go so far as to say the same thing for Michigan, just because they seem like a weird matchup, always having two really good bigs out there. And maybe you could do Merez and Tommy to counteract that. I wouldn't trust Ben and Rickhouse against either of their bigs. And I do think that their guards, with the size that they have in the backcourt, while they are not as maybe dynamic as Illinois' guards, I think that Michigan might actually be a tougher matchup. Purdue's Purdue. But you see, this all goes back to I'm going through the Big Ten there. You're 5-3. It's not the Michigan State loss that hurts you. It's the Northwestern of the USC. And I'm fairly certain at this point there's going to be moments towards the end of this Big Ten season when you're a couple games out of the Big Ten race, even if you're playing really well and you're red hot, and you're saying, gosh, we're better than those teams. But if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, or whatever the saying may be, if we'd beaten USC, if we'd beaten Northwestern, but the officials were bad against Michigan State. Well, in those three, all things considered, there's one loss you can stomach and two that you can't. And the one you could stomach happened yesterday. And in its totality, I still feel pretty damn good going forward with this team and the schedule they have upcoming. So, again, if I never talk about officials again, that'd be great. I know it'll probably happen. This loss didn't do a whole lot to affect you. The net ranking did not move. You're still 8th. Ken Pom, you're still 9th. You have a top 10 defense and a top 20 offense. You are favored by Ken Pom to win your next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. And then you go on the road to Wisconsin and play Duke neutral site, and then end the season with Iowa at home, Michigan on the road, Purdue at home. Listen, there's a streak right here. Maryland, Northwestern at home. At Nebraska, Ohio State at home. Rutgers away, Minnesota away. UCLA, Michigan State at home. You're better than all those teams. I'm not going to go so far as to say go 8-0. But I don't think you should lose more than a game in that. And that would be affording you a loss that you probably should not take. So I'm not disheartened. I'm overall encouraged. But the thing that I haven't been able to shake, and I think time, of course, will heal everything, but the thing I have been able to shake is, man, you guys have Big Ten title talent, and yet you're probably not going to be the ones to get that. Because you look at Michigan State's schedule. I mean, we're projected by Ken Pom to finish 14-6 in conference. I still think 15-5 is on the table. Michigan State projected at 15-5. I mean, they got to stretch up here. Look at this. Rutgers away, Minnesota at home, USC, UCLA away. I bet they split that. Oregon at home, Indiana at home. Those are 2 wins. Illinois on the road. I think they go 6-2 in their next 8. Purdue at home, Michigan on the road, Maryland on the road. Okay, it does tighten up there. Wisconsin at home, Iowa on the road, Michigan at home. It does get tougher at the back end. We'll see if they can sustain this. Michigan's there too, but Purdue, they're winning. Wisconsin, look out. They're winning too. Gag me with a spoon. Though their 2 early losses in the Big Ten kind of hurt, and they have a game coming up tomorrow night at UCLA. So where do we go from here? Again, I think that the next 8 games are a great opportunity to go on a run. Ken Pom had Michigan State as one of those that you would lose. That's why their projection for you does not change. 14-6 in the Big Ten, 22-9 overall. You're probably at that point looking at a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. So just like last year, if you want to bump up, you probably need to overperform that by a little bit. I think they can. And I think if Kasparas is healthy, and hey, again, he got plenty of rest on Sunday, and he looked pretty good when he was out there. think you'll be fine. From Jacob, 15-5, I think it's a share of the title. Need to go 10-2 the rest of the way. I think it's possible, Jacob. The toughest games are on the road at Wisconsin, which will be tough. Despite what you've done against them, that will be an extremely tough game, and at Michigan. The toughest home games are Michigan State and Purdue. And if you want to throw Maryland in there, that's fine, but I like the timing of this. Coming after the Michigan State loss, students back, your atmosphere is fully intact on Thursday night. So I know what's happened against Maryland at home, but I think winning at Maryland last year, later in the season, if there was such a thing as a hex, I think went a long way in doing that, and they have somewhat come back down to earth. I don't trust their coach, Willard. I don't trust him. I think they just exude sloppy, undisciplined, and I think that you can, as physical as Derek Queen and Reese can be down low, I think you have the size to counteract that. Morez is going to play plenty in that game, and that is okay. I love Morez. God, I love Morez. I love Dre. There were still some positives from yesterday, so I don't want that to be lost on the frustration of the loss. Okay, not a whole lot more to talk about in regards to that today. A couple things before I go. There's one thing that I wanted to hit on, and I'll kind of sandwich this into an announcement, a professional announcement, and this will go into my conversation. So it's going to get a little soapboxy here, but give me a second. Beginning tomorrow, so this is Tuesday, and then I'll be starting this, I'm going to be an adjunct instructor for the University of Illinois College of Media. And I've never taught a college class before. This will be my first time doing it. This will be for Intro to Sports Journalism. Now, as I've went about constructing this class, what I want the students to be able to do is figure out, if you want to be in sports journalism, what is your niche? And I want them to understand the difference between objectivity and subjectivity, the responsibilities of someone that carries a press credential versus those of someone that is more into commentary, which is what you get here. You know, I don't ask for press credentials because I don't run the kind of show that is conducive to me going and covering a team with post-game press conferences and all that. So while I have not practiced your traditional beat reporting kind of sports journalism for quite a while, I think my experience in radio and then with the podcast and then with writing the book and even from being a graduate of the College of Media myself, it gives me a perspective where I can hopefully ingrain in these students that whatever you do with sports journalism, if you do in fact pursue it, know what your niche is and know the accompanying responsibilities or journalistic responsibilities that go with it. Speaking of journalistic responsibilities, there was a moment last week that was particularly troubling with Illini Sports Media. To make sure I get this right, I'll pull up the tweet, but Illini Guys is a Illini Sports Media collective, and they are pretty active. You know, I think it's Matthew Stevens, Kedrick Prince, Brad Sturdy. I know Sturdy has been around for a long time, kind of on the recruiting beat, and they do podcasts. They have a website. They produce articles. There was a moment last week that was troubling, though, with how they were going about their reporting. And this is from Kedrick Prince, and I want to make sure that I get this accurate because I think it's important to not misconstrue what was said here. In essence, before I get to that, here we go. And it's still up there. They have not deleted this. This has stayed up on their Twitter account and apparently on their website too, IlliniGuys.com. This is at 3:53 p.m. on January 16th. The tweet read, and this is a link to a story, false Morez Johnson Jr. rumor put to rest by Kedrick Prince. Illini Guys staff received reports that Johnson had become ill and passed out during a workout. However, after making several calls to investigate, it was discovered the claims were unfounded. In essence, Illini Guys and Kedrick posted a story about a false rumor that was not even really circulating anywhere of note. It wasn't on IllinoisLoyalty.com. It wasn't on the Illini Inquirer message boards. It wasn't exactly gaining a lot of heat on Twitter or, frankly, any place. Where this post even originated, I have no earthly idea. But essentially Illini guys who are credentialed members, or some of whom are credentialed members of the Illini media, decided to say, here's a rumor, and it's false. Let me make this really easy for any aspiring journalist. You don't publish rumors. You don't make a story about rumors. You verify if the rumor is true, and only then do you publish something. You do not publish a story to refute a false rumor, which only serves to give more credence to the false rumor that, in this case, no one had even heard of in the freaking first place. I've had my issues with the way that Kedrick Prince, for example, has towed the line between credentialed journalist and essentially acting as a mouthpiece for the Illini marketing team. 4 years ago in 2021, when Brett Bielema took over, the week before the Illinois-Nebraska game, Kedrick Prince was directing his followers to go buy tickets to the game. That is not what a credentialed member of the press is supposed to do. When I called him out on that, he wanted to engage in a bit of Twitter Twitter back and forth and direct messaging. I said, fine, let's call. We can talk this out, whatever it may be. Of course, he didn't do that. He ends up blocking me. I have a major problem with people cosplaying journalists, which is essentially what Illini guys are. You are not a serious organization, a serious journalistic organization, if this is the kind of crap that you are putting on your website, on your Twitter, and you're allowing it to be left up there 4 days later. You're not a serious journalistic enterprise, though they're masquerading as one. My advice would be, and they wouldn't take it, but what the hell, I'll throw it out. You can do all this. Right, wrong, whatever, okay? Do you. Do the thing that Ryan Schroet does sometimes. Unverified, unsubstantiated, run with it. Let rumors kind of be your bread and butter, okay? Don't ask for a press credential. And this actually goes to the Illini operations themselves. They don't need to give press credentials to everybody. So if you see it being abused by people that don't know how to practice journalism, you don't need to grant them that access. It's very frustrating. They got a quote from Morez Johnson Sr. about this. And then they try to spin this into, in the world of college athletes, there's a lot of pressure on these kids. A lot of rumors. Essentially trying to make it sound like they were doing Morez a solid by publishing this. Are you serious? Are these adults running this over there? Are these people with any earthly idea what your responsibilities are as a journalist? Even if it's a side gig. It's just basic integrity stuff. They got hammered from people all across saying, not pretty bad look, guys. What are you doing? A few F-bombs here and there, like, what the F are you doing? And that just kind of bothered me from a admittedly soapboxy perspective. But I don't come on here pretending to be a credentialed member of the media because I'm not. I knew a long time ago when I really got active in radio and I realized that I could talk about Illini sports from the perspective I'd always had as a fan, that I was not going to be able to take that responsibly into the realm of being a credentialed member of the media that follows the team, that asks questions of the players and coaches. Sure, Lon and I could have Josh Whitman on the show a couple times, and we did. We could interview coaches, and we did. But those coaches also knew that our show, or back in the day when it was Tay and Jay and I was third mic, that Jeremy was the reporter, but the rest of it was really kind of having fun and maybe being asked questions that they wouldn't get on 1400. Lon never pretended to be credentialed. I never pretended to be credentialed. We would not want anyone to think that that line between objective and subjective is being blurred. So I've made plenty of mistakes and said plenty of dumb things on this podcast and will continue to do so. But what I'm not going to ever do is just throw out frickin' rumors about 18 to 22-year-olds. Yeah, I know they're paid now, so that means for their on-court and on-field performance, I will probably be a little more critical of them. If they're getting paid good money, got to perform. That's the American way on this inauguration day. That is the American way. It's a meritocracy, baby. But just to throw random ass rumors out there, what are we doing? I highly doubt those guys listen to this, and that's okay. But it is a shame that there seems to be an abundance of Illini sports content that are people just talking out of their ass about this stuff. And irresponsible is the nicest word I can put to it. So, you know what the rule of thumb is? As far as verifying a fact, can't just be one source. Got to have at least a secondary source. And if it's about something to the degree of this, Perez Johnson, there was a rumor that he passed out in practice. He became ill and passed out. You better get a third one before you publish anything. What they did was backwards. According to them, they investigated the rumor after it happened. Okay, maybe they did. Maybe they did find 2 or 3 sources that said, no, it didn't happen. Okay. When you find those sources that say it didn't happen, you don't publish anything. It's that simple. It's that simple. All right, that's hopefully the last time we have to talk about Illini guys in this program. I know, listen, everybody's just trying to do their thing. I've spoken about them twice. When Kedrick Prince tries to sell tickets for the Illini football program, and this, twice. Ryan Evan, Ryan Schroeder, whatever, I don't really talk about him. It's people have their minds made up already about that, and it's not really in my purview. It's like, let's just try to be serious about this. And if you aren't serious, just admit that you aren't serious. Sometimes we are not serious on this program. And I think that my listeners and viewers and readers of the book, they know that. This is truly just a fan yapping, for better or worse. And yeah, sometimes worse, I admit. But that's all it is. So here's what we got coming up. On Thursday, there is a Maryland game. I want to make sure. And Frank, by the way, hello, Frank. You had said hello earlier in this program, so good to see you. I want to make sure I get the time of this game correct. Illinois and Maryland on Thursday night. Maryland, January 23rd. Okay, 8 o'clock Central. Dagnabbit. Getting old, man. 8 o'clock, that's all right. It'll do. But yes, a big opportunity for Illinois. I think that they should be in good shape with this. Maryland, 4-4 in the conference. Illinois, 5-3. Yes, Maryland is a talented group with a really good front court, but I think the matchup is fine for Illinois, and I'm not worried about the Hex. And I'm not just trying to be bullheaded about it. I do think the atmosphere at State Farm Center will be conducive to, okay, get back on track. I think what happens Sunday will have this team really ticked off about the circumstances, and I hope that bodes well for their performance. Thank you guys for tuning in. I got to thank Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, Steak, Seafood, and Spirits. For my money, the best place to eat in Champaign-Urbana, and a great pregame spot as well. If it's an 8 o'clock tip against Maryland, why not go there? Get a 6 o'clock dinner. You'll get over to State Farm Center in plenty of time. You can get a drink or two before you go over there. And delicious bone-in steak. That's always my recommendation when you go to Hamilton Walkers. Family-style sides, which you can share with the table, and plenty of other options, including comfort plates, like basically a $20 hamburger, which is a really, really good hamburger. Steak and Shake it is not. No offense to Steak and Shake. That's take-home a sack is good every now and then, but not when you want quality food. So that's Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728. Now more than ever, you can make sure that your furnace is operating at 100% because you're going to need it in these next few days. That's Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Owen Builders LLC. Online at owenbuildersllc.com. Check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote while you're there at owenbuildersllc.com. And finally, State Farm agent Brian Hansen. Online at brianismyguy.com. Life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Thank you for tuning in. For the folks that stopped in on YouTube this afternoon/evening, I appreciate you. Stay warm for the love of God. It's really cold. And then Thursday, we shall see. If I have the opportunity to go to the game, I might do that. But if not, I'll be down here for the second half. And if it turns out where I do go to the game, I'll get a podcast sometime on Friday. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. And God, go Ohio State, go Notre Dame. I don't know. I'm recording this before the national title game. I don't know who to root for. If they could both lose, that'd be just dandy with me. Talk to you soon, everybody. It is the 200 level. Thanks, YouTube. Take care.